Hello. For those of you this speech may reach that do not know me personally, my name is Tiffany Sheffield. I'm a junior at Abilene Christian University, and I'm majoring in communications with a minor in Spanish and nutrition. My interest in nutrition started from a young age because I had a mother who was very concerned with my personal health and wellness, and it has since continued in my education through schooling, my 4 certifications as a group exercise instructor, and my personal training certification. I come in contact with nutrition daily, and I love it. I love helping people lose weight, feel great, and gain some muscle. What I do not like about nutrition, however, is that there are several differing opinions. I understand that some scientific evidences do differ, and that one diet that works for one person may not work for another person. But what I do not understand, however, and what I will not tolerate in regards to nutrition, is when I see someone or something knowledgeably leading someone astray in regards to their health and wellness. This is what I believe the USDA has done with the U.S. Dietary Guidelines, and I am prepared to defend my position on why. I do not believe the government should regulate or be involved in nutrition guidelines due to a conflict of interest and issues pertaining to simply one extremely powerful organization being in control of such an important matter. In my first speech, I outlined the history of the USDA involvement in nutrition, primarily concerning dietary guidelines, and I finished it by reading the USDA's vision statement, which is exactly where we will pick up this speech. The USDA vision statement is to expand economic opportunity through innovation, helping rural America to thrive, to promote agricultural production sustainability that better nourishes Americans, while also helping feed others throughout the world, and to preserve and conserve our nation's natural resources through restored forests, improved watersheds, and healthy private working lands. I believe the USDA's very own vision statement clearly outlines their conflict of interest: helping rural America to thrive, and to promote agriculture production sustainability that better nourishes Americans. Responsible for the health of the U.S., responsible for the health of the U.S. food industry. I will further explain this conflict of interests. This next section of information I will be presenting is from an article entitled "A Fatally Flawed Food Guide." This is quite possibly my most important piece of evidence I have to present to you, and that is primarily because this was written by Louise Light. Louise Light is the former USDA Director of Dietary Guidance and Nutrition Education Research. In the early 80s, she was the leader of a group of top-level nutritionists with the USDA who developed the eating guide that became known as the Food Guide Pyramid. According to Louise Light, the food guide she and her colleagues submitted to the Secretary of Agriculture was very different than the one returned to her and published. In the returned food guidelines, the suggested 5 to 9 vegetables was lowered to 2 to 3 servings a day. The recommended servings of 3 to 4 whole grains was raised to an astounding 6 to 11 servings. What makes this specific amplification of grains even more detrimental is that Louise Light and her colleagues created a separate category of baked goods that were made with white flour, and they placed this category at the peak of the pyramid to be used sparingly. In the return guidelines, not only did this category no longer exist, baked goods made with white flour then fell into the pyramid's base of 6 to 11 servings of grain. Wording of "eat less" was also changed to "avoid too much" in the return dietary guidelines. The return guidelines essentially do not restrict any food group. In Louise's own words, the wholesale changes made to the guide by the Office of the Secretary of Agriculture were calculated to win the acceptance of the food industry. She also states, "Ultimately, the food industry dictates the government's food advice, shaping the nutrition agenda delivered to the public. In fact, to the food industry, the purpose of food guides is to persuade consumers that all foods, especially those that they're selling, fit into a healthful diet." In this speech, I am primarily discussing the USDA, but I will also discuss the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, formerly known as the ADA, or American Dietetics Association. This organization is responsible for the licensing of registered dietitians. I am discussing the A&D along with the USDA because I believe their relationship is harmful for the American population. One of the reasons I believe this is because of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics sponsors. These sponsors include Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Mars, and Kellogg, just to name a few. These companies are paying the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and they even provide educational courses for registered dietitians. Okay, so now we are aware of the conflict of interest both present in the USDA and the A&D. The USDA is responsible to the food industries. The A&D is responsible to their paying sponsors. Now, let's talk about why the relationship between the USDA and A&D is harmful to the U.S. at large, and how this contributes to my second main concern for government involvement in dietary guidelines, which is control. Under pressure from the Healthy Nation Coalition, the USDA was required to reveal their identities of the 2010 Dietary Guidelines Independent Scientific Review Panel. This is who was credited with peer reviewing the guidelines for scientific accuracy. This disclosure revealed that 7 of 8 members were registered dietitians. We have just discussed who educates registered dietitians and who pays for the education of registered dietitians that have then approved these food guidelines. I believe Adele Height, director of the Healthy Nation Coalition, words it best. The ADA, this is the A&D now, but was formerly known as the American Dietetics Association, is an industry-friendly organization. The USDA appears to rely on ADA-trained registered dietitians to confirm their own industry-friendly guidelines. The self-supporting relationship between the ADA and the USDA does not benefit either the credibility of registered dietitians or the health of Americans. This self-supporting relationship is continued because the A&D educates and certifies registered dietitians according to what I believe are flawed USDA dietary guidelines. The A&D also limits registered dietitian scope of practice only to USDA-approved recommendations, and the A&D has sponsored legislation in multiple states to limit the practice of nutrition solely to registered dietitians. This would eliminate the practice of nutritionists or natural health practitioners, or essentially anyone who has not been trained or educated by the USDA. The best way to demonstrate this issue of such a powerful organization being in control of such an important matter is through the issue of Steve Cooksey, a paleo blogger. After being diagnosed with diabetes and nearly dying of its complications, Steve Cooksey decided that the high-carb, low-fat diet his doctors recommended might not be the best choice for him. Instead, he adopted a low-carb paleo diet, lost 80 pounds, freed himself of his medications, normalized his blood glucose, and claims to feel healthier than ever. So satisfied with his results, he started a blog. And in December of 2011, he even started an advice column on his blog to answer readers' questions. In January 2012, the North Carolina Board of Nutrition Dietetics informed Steve that he could not give readers personal advice on diet, whether for free or for compensation, because doing so constituted the unlicensed and thus criminal practice of dietetics. The state board also told Steve that his private emails and telephone calls with friends and readers were illegal if he gave them nutritional advice. Violating the North Carolina licensing law can lead to fines, court orders to be silent, and even jail if Steve Cooksey did not apply. Once again, I do not believe that one organization with the power to do this should be in control of such an important matter. I believe that other organizations that disagree with the USDA's dietary guidelines should be able to speak up about it. So, in conclusion, my name is Tiffany Sheffield. I'm a junior at Abilene Christian University, majoring in communications with a minor in Spanish and nutrition. I'm passionate about nutrition because I'm passionate about people and their well-being. And I am not comfortable with the conflict of interest between the USDA and the food industry. between the conflict of interest between the A&D that is trained by the USDA and sponsored by unhealthy corporations. I'm not comfortable with the issues of control pertaining to the self-supporting relationship between the USDA and A&D. And I'm not comfortable with the government having so much power and influence that they have potential to eliminate anyone who disagrees with them in regards to dietary guidelines. I believe the U.S. Dietary Guidelines are such an important matter because it is what our school lunches are based off of, what food assistant programs are based off of, what registered dietitians are trained according to, and they are who we will turn to in this obesity epidemic. If what I have presented with you today makes you uncomfortable as well, please be patient and wait for my next speech outlining what I believe should be done about this conflict of interests and issues of control and how I believe you may be able to help. Thank you.